Commander Chen watched the main view screen as the precision missiles struck the Vexeri command vessel. The crystalline ship absorbed most of the impact, its strange lattice structure redistributing the energy, but a visible crack appeared along its central spine. "Your weapons are inefficient." The Vexeri ambassador's voice resonated through the comms. Its translation matrix rendered the words in perfect English, yet utterly devoid of emotion. "Our analysis indicates your species has a 17% chance of survival if you resist. Surrender now, and we offer 23% survival rate as productive members of the Vexari Dominion." Chen's senior officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez whispered, "They're offering us better odds if we surrender. They're offering us slavery with better marketing." Chen replied, loud enough for the comms to pick up, "And their math is wrong." The view screen shifted to reveal the ambassador's form, a bipedal crystalline entity with geometric precision to its features. Multiple faceted eyes regarded Chen with what might have been curiosity. "Explain your assertion that our calculations are incorrect," it demanded. Chen stood from her command chair, straightening her uniform. "Your calculations assume we value raw survival over how we survive. They assume we'll behave according to statistical probabilities rather than individual choice. Most importantly, they assume you understand humans." The Vexeri paused, facets shifting slightly. "We have studied your transmissions for decades. We understand your species thoroughly." A small smile touched Chen's lips. "Then you should have known how we'd respond." She nodded to her communications officer, who cut the transmission. The bridge crew watched as the Vexeri fleet rearranged itself into attack formation with fluid, mathematical precision. "All Earth defense stations. This is Commander Chen. Battle Plan Omega-7 is now in effect. Godspeed." She turned to her tactical officer. "Status of the Mars colonies." "Governor Okafor reports their defense grid is online, Commander. They've activated the dust shield." Chen nodded. The massive electromagnetic field around Mars would amplify the planet's natural dust storms, creating a barrier the Vexeri sensors couldn't penetrate. The colonists would be effectively invisible, the first phase of humanity's response. And Europa. Research Station Galileo has executed Protocol Deep Dive. All personnel and equipment are now beneath the ice. The surface appears abandoned. Another piece falling into place. The Europa Station, with its advanced physics lab, would be crucial in the coming days. The Vexeri fleet surged forward, energy weapons charging. The largest vessels opened fire on Earth's orbital defense platforms. 3 exploded instantly, their fragments cascading toward the atmosphere in fiery streaks. Lieutenant Harrison at navigation turned to Chen. "Commander, we're outgunned 10-1. The Resilient wasn't built for direct confrontation with their capital ships." "No, it wasn't," Chen agreed, watching the destruction with steely calm. "But it was built to be fast." She leaned forward. "Plot course for the Lagrange point. Maximum thrust on my mark." As the Resilient accelerated away from Earth, the Vexeri fleet split, half continuing their bombardment, half pursuing Chen's vessel. "They took the bait," Rodriguez observed. Chen nodded. "Predictable. Their tactical algorithms can't tolerate an enemy flagship retreating. They see it as an opportunity." Her hand tightened on the armrest. "They don't understand that sometimes retreating is part of the plan." As the ship accelerated toward the designated coordinates, Chen opened a secure channel to a hidden facility buried deep in the Himalayas. Phase 1 complete. The pursuit force is committed. You have 12 hours before they realize what we're doing. Dr. Maya Patel's voice came through, steady despite the gravity of the situation. "That's all we need, Commander. The water catalyst is almost ready." Chen ended the transmission and looked out at the stars. The battle for Earth had begun, but the real war would be won by the elements that made humans unique: imagination, deception, and the absolute refusal to follow anyone's rules but their own. Dr. Maya Patel bent over her microscope in the Himalayan research facility, watching in fascination as ordinary water molecules interacted with a fragment of Vexari technology. The crystalline structure, so perfect and orderly, began to develop microscopic fractures where the water touched it. "It's like they've never encountered humidity before," she murmured to her colleague, Dr. Wei Chen, no relation to the commander. "Their molecular structure can't accommodate the hydrogen bonding." Dr. Wei adjusted his glasses. "An advanced spacefaring civilization that's vulnerable to water. That seems unlikely." "Not water specifically," Maya corrected, making notes on her tablet. "It's the chaotic molecular behavior of water that their crystalline matrix can't compute. Look." She pointed to the viewscreen displaying the molecular interaction. Water molecules form and break bonds constantly, in patterns that appear random but follow quantum rules. The Vexari materials are designed for perfect predictability, down to the subatomic level. A distant rumble shook dust from the ceiling. The Vexari bombardment was getting closer. "We need to weaponize this discovery," Wei said, glancing nervously upward. "But how do we deliver water to their ships in space?" Maya smiled. "We don't need to. We just need to replicate its molecular behavior in something that will travel through vacuum." She pulled up a schematic on her tablet. Something like this. In Mumbai, 17-year-old Anya Sharma huddled with her university classmates in a basement shelter as Vexari ships patrolled overhead. Their professor had been killed in the initial attack, but the advanced computation class had continued their work, analyzing Vexari battle patterns from hacked satellite feeds. "Look at this," Anya said, pointing to her laptop screen where a visualization displayed the movement patterns of the alien fleet. "Every attack follows the same mathematical progression. It's like they're solving an equation rather than fighting a war." Her classmate Raj nodded. "Fibonacci sequences in their flanking maneuvers. Perfect geometric spacing between support vessels. Even their retreat patterns are mathematically optimal." "Which means they're predictable," Anya realized. She began typing rapidly, creating a simulation. "If we know where they'll be before they get there." Halfway around the world, Lieutenant Jamal Harrison received the Mumbai team's data packet aboard the submarine U.S. Leviathan, one of the few military vessels that had escaped the initial Vexari assault by being deep underwater during the attack. "Sir, you need to see this," his communications officer said, transferring the file to the main tactical display. Harrison studied the simulation showing predicted Vexari fleet movements based on mathematical models. "These kids might have just given us a fighting chance," he murmured. "Prepare a strike team. We're going to hit the Vexari where they don't expect it, where their equations say we can't possibly be." The Leviathan silently changed course, heading toward a Vexari supply depot that the aliens had established in the mid-Atlantic. According to the Mumbai model, the depot would be at its most vulnerable in exactly 17 hours, when the Vexari algorithms calculated human forces would be regrouping, not attacking. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Chen watched as her ship, the Resilient, led a dozen Vexari vessels on an elaborate chase through the asteroid belt. The aliens maintained perfect formation even while navigating the space rocks. "Predictable," Chen whispered. "Calculate the next 5 moves they'll make," she instructed her tactical officer. "Already done, Commander. If they maintain their pattern, they'll execute a pincer maneuver in approximately 3 minutes. Chen smiled. "And when they do, we'll be ready." She activated the ship's comms. "All hands, prepare for planned chaos. Let's show these crystal perfectionists what happens when you try to solve humanity with an equation." As the Resilience engines powered up, the ship prepared to do something no rational spacefaring vessel would attempt. Something gloriously, irrationally human. Zhou Lin tapped rapidly on her keyboard, her eyes never leaving the scrolling symbols on her screen. The basement of the Seattle Public Library had become an unlikely command center for her team of neurodivergent programmers. The city above them lay partially in ruins, but down here, surrounded by old books and newer servers, they were fighting back in their own way. "I've isolated another pattern in their communications," Zhou announced, her voice calm despite the excitement of discovery. They use a crystalline resonance frequency that shifts according to prime number sequences. Marcus, a programmer with synesthesia, nodded enthusiastically. I can see it in the audio patterns. The colors change predictably at each sequence break. Zoe's fingers flew across the keyboard. If we can predict the frequency shifts, we can listen in on everything they say, finished Diana, the team's mathematician. She pushed her glasses up her nose. And possibly even insert our own communications. Outside, the sound of Vexari patrol ships vibrated the ceiling. The team had chosen the library deliberately. Its old stone construction masked their electronic signatures, and the Vexari had dismissed it as irrelevant after their initial scans showed only paper books. They underestimate old technology, Zoe muttered as she worked. They underestimate different kinds of minds. Their mistake. Half a world away in the Amazon rainforest, indigenous scout Teresa Mendoza moved silently through the dense undergrowth, her movements indistinguishable from the natural swaying of vegetation. Behind her followed 5 members of her tribe, and, surprisingly, 3 former logging company employees who had once been their adversaries. Teresa held up her hand, signaling the group to stop. Ahead, a Vexari patrol unit hovered above the forest floor, its sensors sweeping methodically. The silicon-based aliens couldn't handle the humidity well, but their technology compensated, creating a bubble of dry air around them. She gestured to Miguel, once her tribe's most bitter enemy when his company had tried to clear their ancestral lands. Now they had a common foe. Miguel nodded and withdrew a small device from his pack, one of Dr. Patel's water catalysts, designed to replicate water's chaotic molecular behavior. As the patrol passed beneath a massive kapok tree, Teresa signaled. Miguel activated the device and tossed it onto the Vexari unit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystalline surface of the alien patrol unit began to fracture, spiderweb cracks spreading across its perfect geometry. The Vexari emitted a high-pitched sound, perhaps pain, perhaps alarm, before its hovering became erratic. Teresa and her team were already moving, disappearing into the undergrowth before the unit crashed to the forest floor. The outpost is 2 kilometers northeast, Teresa whispered once they were safe. According to the information from Seattle, the Vexari are gathering specimens of rainforest plants there. Biological weapons research, Miguel replied grimly. They're looking for compounds that affect human physiology. Teresa nodded. Then we must reach it before they find what they're looking for. She glanced at their unlikely group, indigenous people who had navigated these forests for generations and loggers who had once sought to destroy them, now united. The Vexari expect us to fight each other. They don't understand that humans can change, can forgive, can work together despite past differences. Miguel checked his supplies. They understand mathematics and logic, but not the human heart. And that, Teresa said as she led them deeper into the forest, is why they will lose this world. She tapped the communication device disguised as a tribal ornament around her neck. Seattle team, this is Amazon Group. We are proceeding to target. Stand by for data transmission once we've infiltrated. Zoe's voice came through clearly, thanks to their new understanding of Vexari communication frequencies. Copy, Amazon Group. We're ready when you are. Be safe. As darkness fell over the rainforest, Teresa reflected on how the invasion had accomplished what decades of conflict had not. It had united humanity against a common threat. The Vexari had calculated human division as a strategic advantage. They hadn't calculated the human capacity to overcome it. The former Silicon Valley office park had been converted into what the Resistance now called Adaptation Center Alpha. Engineers and scientists from dozens of countries worked side by side, hunched over salvaged Vexari technology. What had begun as desperate reverse engineering had evolved into something the aliens never anticipated: innovation. Marcus Wong stood back from his workstation, stretching his arms above his head. Before the invasion, he had designed physics engines for virtual reality games. Now he was applying those same principles to something far more crucial. Run the simulation again, he instructed his team. On the holographic display, a virtual human fighter craft executed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional aerospace dynamics, increased the gravitational stress by 20%. The simulation adjusted, showing strain on the craft's structure, but still maintaining integrity. His colleague, Dr. Lydia Okafor, shook her head in amazement. The Vexeri would never attempt these maneuvers, she said. Their flight patterns prioritize efficiency and minimal structural stress. Marcus nodded. Exactly. Their ships are designed for perfect flight conditions. Ours need to be designed for chaos. He adjusted parameters on his console. We're not trying to beat their technology. We're making technology that works differently. Across the facility, engineer Sanjay Mehta carefully extracted a crystalline power cell from a damaged Vexeri scout ship. The alien technology hummed with energy, its lattice structure distributing power with perfect efficiency. But Sanjay wasn't interested in efficiency. The Vexeri build technology that works perfectly under ideal conditions, he explained to the group of engineers watching him. But humans need technology that works adequately under terrible conditions. He connected the power cell to a modified human shield generator. Under normal circumstances, the pairing would be considered inefficient. The shield would waste nearly 40% of the available energy. But as Sanjay activated the system, the shield flickered to life with an unexpected property. It's modulating, observed one of the engineers. The energy pattern is constantly changing. Sanjay smiled. Precisely. We're using the wasted energy to create an unpredictable shield matrix. The Vexeri weapons are calibrated to hit static targets. They struggle against anything that doesn't behave according to their calculations. At the center of the facility, Commander Chen had arrived for her first in-person inspection. Lieutenant Harrison walked alongside her, briefing her on their progress. We've retrofitted 11 fighter craft with the modified Vexeri technology, he reported. The shield modulation system is installed on 5 of them, with the others scheduled for completion within 48 hours. Chen nodded, pausing to observe a test firing of a hybrid weapon, human railgun technology powered by Vexeri energy cells. The result was less elegant than pure Vexeri weapons, but significantly more unpredictable in its energy signature. And the neural interface? She asked. Harrison led her to a sealed room where test pilots were being fitted with headsets. This is where Marcus Wong's gaming background proved invaluable. The Vexeri control their ships through crystalline thought structures. Very organized, very precise. Our version is messier but more intuitive for human minds. Through the observation window, Chen watched as a pilot in a simulator executed impossible maneuvers, her thoughts directly controlling the virtual craft in ways that defied the neat algorithms of Vexeri flight patterns. How soon can we deploy? Chen asked. The Sydney defense is scheduled for 600 tomorrow, Harrison replied. The Vexeri are bringing in a harvester ship to begin resource extraction. Their tactical predictive models will show them facing minimal resistance, the same resistance pattern they've encountered at every other resource-rich location. Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. But this time, we're changing the pattern. Harrison nodded. Yes, Commander. This time, we're changing everything. As the facility hummed with activity around them, Chen reflected on how quickly humans had adapted. The Vexeri measured progress in carefully planned increments over decades. Humans, faced with extinction, innovated in desperate, brilliant leaps. It wasn't just technology they were adapting. It was their entire approach to survival. Kirzet moved through the Berlin refugee camp with careful steps, their crystalline form disguised beneath a hooded human coat and gloves. The Vexeri analyst had studied human movement patterns extensively before this infiltration, but executing them perfectly proved more challenging than anticipated. Humans moved with subtle inefficiencies, hesitations, shifts of weight, unnecessary gestures that were difficult to replicate. The camp sprawled across what had once been the Tiergarten, now transformed into a maze of makeshift shelters. Despite devastation surrounding them, the humans had established systems, food distribution centers, medical tents, communal gathering spaces, with remarkable speed. "You knew here." A woman approached, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes alert. According to Kurzet's facial recognition database, this was Sophia Mueller, former university professor. "Yes," Kurzet replied, modulating their voice synthesizer to match regional speech patterns. "Arrived yesterday." Sophia studied them with unexpected intensity. "You should see the medics. You're moving like you're injured." This unexpected observation caused Kurzet's crystalline thought patterns to momentarily destabilize. The mission parameters hadn't accounted for human perceptiveness about body language. "I'll do that," Kurzet replied, adjusting their stance to incorporate a slight favoring of the left leg. "Old injury, nothing serious." Before Sophia could respond, a distant rumble shook the ground. Vexeri harvester drones were operating at the city's edge, stripping buildings for resources. Kurzet expected the typical human response to threat: retreat to shelter. But instead, Sophia's reaction defied prediction algorithms. "Come on," she said, grabbing Kurzet's gloved hand. "We need to help with the children." Kurzet found themselves pulled toward a large tent where dozens of young humans were being guided underground by adults. The children showed signs of fear, elevated heart rates, stress vocalizations, yet they moved with remarkable discipline. "Take these." Sophia thrust a stack of thin rectangles. "Books," Kurzet realized, into their hands. "Read to the younger ones. It keeps them calm during the raids." The Vexeri analyst stood frozen, computational matrix struggling to process this directive. Their mission was observation, not interaction. Reading human fiction to offspring held no tactical value. A small human female, approximately 6 years old according to their database, tugged at Kurzet's coat. "Can you read the one about the rabbit? Please." Something in the child's expression, hope amid fear, created an unprecedented ripple through Kurzet's crystalline neural pathways. Without conscious decision, they found themselves sitting on the floor, surrounded by children, opening a colorful book about a fictional lagomorph. Hours later, when the raid ended, Kurzet observed Sophia organizing volunteers to search for survivors in a collapsed apartment building nearby. Despite clear danger from unstable structures, humans rushed forward when a child's cry was heard from within the rubble. "The probability of successful extraction is below 30%, Kurzet stated, forgetting momentarily to maintain their cover. "The risk to rescuers exceeds acceptable parameters." Sophia gave them a strange look. "We don't calculate odds when a child is involved." For 3 hours, Kurzet watched humans dig with bleeding hands, passing tools and encouragement in equal measure. When they finally extracted the child, alive but injured, the collective emotional response from the humans created detectable changes in atmospheric composition. Cheering, weeping, embracing. Emotional expressions that Vexeri strategic analyses had categorized as weaknesses. Yet Kurzet could not reconcile this assessment with the evidence before them. These emotional responses seemed to generate renewed energy, strengthened social bonds, and increased collective resilience, outcomes that were quantifiably advantageous for survival. That night, alone in their assigned shelter, Kurzet attempted to transmit standard observations to the Vexeri command. Their report began conventionally. Human emotional responses continue to create strategic inefficiencies. But for the first time in their existence, Kurzet hesitated before completing the transmission. The standard analysis felt incomplete. Incorrect, even. The Vexeri had been conquering species across the galaxy for millennia, yet none had resisted like humans. Perhaps the strategic models were missing critical variables. Perhaps what the Vexeri had always considered human weakness was actually strength in a form they had never before encountered. The secret summit on Europa took place beneath 2 kilometers of ice, in chambers carved by human ingenuity and determination. Commander Chen stood before representatives of species she had never imagined meeting. Beings of light, gas, and segmented exoskeletons, all united by a common experience: subjugation by the Vexari. "Your resistance is unprecedented," said Elder Lumna of the Luminar, her form shifting between shades of blue and violet. "In 17 standard cycles, no species has maintained organized opposition beyond initial conquest." Chen nodded. "Humans are stubborn that way." Beside her, Kirzet translated concepts that had no direct equivalent across languages. The defected Vexari analyst had become invaluable, not just for their knowledge of enemy tactics, but for their ability to bridge vast cultural divides. "The Vexari believe uniformity equals strength," Kirzet explained. "They conquered the Luminar by disrupting their light harmonics, forced the NIF collective into specific atmospheric conditions that limited their mobility, and restricted the Xerath from accessing their genetic memory banks. They exploit what makes each species unique," Chen observed. "They turn strengths into vulnerabilities. Yet they have failed to identify humanity's true strength," said Sarvek, representative of the insectoid Xerath. Their compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like faceted jewels. "We have studied your broadcasts, your music, your art. You are a species of contradictions, warlike yet compassionate, individualistic yet capable of profound cooperation." Chen smiled slightly. "We contain multitudes." "Show them," Kirzet suggested quietly. Chen nodded and activated the holographic display. Images appeared in sequence. A Brazilian soccer team executing a perfectly coordinated play, an orchestra performing with dozens of different instruments in harmony, surgeons of different nationalities working together to separate conjoined twins, armies from former enemy nations conducting joint exercises. "Humans developed specialization," Chen explained, "but never at the cost of adaptability. A soldier can create art. A scientist can learn combat. Our differences make us stronger, not weaker." The NIF representative, a swirling collection of gases contained in a modified environment suit, moved forward. "The Vexari told us uniformity was the path to advancement. We believed them because they showed us only the weaknesses in our differences." "They showed you what they wanted you to see," Chen replied, "just as they only see what they expect in us." She gestured, and the hologram shifted to display schematics. Hybrid technologies combining elements from all 4 species. "Luminar light manipulation can enhance Xerath genetic memory transfer," Chen explained, pointing to one design. "NIF atmospheric control can regulate the crystalline structures the Vexari depend on. And human unpredictability can make all of it work in ways the Vexari cannot anticipate." Elder Lumna's color shifted to a deep, resolute gold. "What do you propose, Commander?" "An alliance," Chen said simply, "not based on conquering worlds or imposing uniformity, but on celebrating our differences. The Vexari believe diversity is chaos. We believe it's strength." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then, one by one, the representatives of species spanning the galaxy began to signal agreement, each in their own way. The Luminar glowed brighter, the NIF swirled faster, the Xerath clicked their mandibles in rhythm. "There is a human concept," Chen continued, "of synergy. When combined elements create something greater than the sum of their parts. The Vexari conquered each of your worlds because they faced you separately. Together, we become something new, something they cannot predict or counter because it has never existed before." Kirzet stepped forward, their crystalline form catching the light. "As a former Vexari analyst, I can confirm the strategic matrices contain no contingency for multi-species resistance. It is, in their terms, an uncomputable scenario." Chen smiled. "Uncomputable scenarios are humanity's specialty." She extended her hand toward the center of the chamber, to the Alliance of Free Species. One by one, the representatives joined their hands, appendages or energy fields to hers, a gesture that transcended biological differences and crystallized a new hope in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds. The battle above Crystallis unfolded unlike any conflict in galactic history. Alliance vessels, each a hybrid of technologies from multiple species, moved in formations that defied conventional battle algorithms. Luminar light-bending technology rendered some ships nearly invisible until the moment they struck. NIF atmospheric controllers disrupted the perfect environmental conditions the Vexori required. Xarath genetic memory allowed instant adaptation to enemy tactics, and at the center of it all, human unpredictability tied everything together. On the bridge of the flagship Defiance, formerly the Resilient, now upgraded with alien technology, Commander Chen watched the tactical display with steady focus. Vexari command ships are adjusting their formation, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. They're attempting to isolate our attack wings. Chen nodded. Exactly as predicted. Signal the Luminar vessels to execute Maneuver Sunburst. Across the battlefield, 5 ships piloted by Luminar crews suddenly erupted in blinding light patterns that scrambled Vexari sensory arrays. In the moment of confusion, Xarath vessels darted through gaps in the enemy formation, their genetic memory allowing them to navigate by remembering the enemy positions from microseconds earlier. The manufacturing facility's shields are fluctuating, Rodriguez announced. NIF infiltration teams have reached the environmental controls. Chen turned to Dr. Maya Patel, who had insisted on joining this mission. Are you ready? The scientist nodded, her expression determined. The molecular disruptors are set. Once we're inside, we'll have 14 minutes to reach the central database. Chen looked at Kirzet, who stood nearby monitoring Vexari communications. What are they saying? The defectors' crystalline features reflected the chaos on the view screen. They're confused. Their tactical algorithms are generating contradictory responses. Some ships are receiving orders to advance while others are told to retreat. Their command structure is fragmenting. Because they can't compute what we're doing, Chen said with satisfaction. Signal all vessels. Phase 2 begins now. The Alliance fleet suddenly shifted tactics completely, abandoning their previous patterns for an entirely new approach. Vexari ships, already struggling to adapt to the first strategy, found themselves completely unprepared for the change. As the defensive line broke, the Defiance led a strike team directly toward the planet's surface. Crystallis, true to its name, was a world of perfect geometric structures, a manufacturing hub where the Vexari created the technology that maintained their empire. We had a landing window, Rodriguez announced, 90 seconds before their ground defenses reorient. Chen nodded to Maya and the strike team. Go. Find what we need and get out. As the team departed for the shuttle bay, Kirzet approached Chen. Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's core. The Vexari are activating something. Something not in any database I can access. Chen frowned. Could it be a weapon? No. Kirzet's voice contained something Chen had never heard before. Fear. It appears to be some kind of transmission to their other worlds. A fail-safe protocol. 6 hours later, the strike team returned with data crystals recovered from the Vexari central database. Maya's face was pale as she handed them to Chen. You need to see this immediately, she said. We finally know what the Vexari truly are. In the secure briefing room, the command staff gathered as Maya connected the crystals to their systems. Images appeared on screen, biological schematics, genetic sequences, engineering specifications. They're artificial, Maya explained, her voice hushed with the weight of discovery. The Vexari weren't evolved naturally. They were created, engineered by a species called the Architects over 60,000 years ago. Kirzet trembled visibly. I had suspicions, gaps in our historical records that never made sense. They were designed as perfect warriors, Maya continued. Silicon-based to ensure longevity, crystalline neural networks for computational efficiency, emotionally limited to prevent empathy for enemies. She looked at Kirzet with compassion. They were never allowed to evolve naturally. Their programming prevents significant deviation from original parameters. Chen understood the implications immediately. That's why they can't adapt to us. They literally can't comprehend approaches that fall outside their programming. And why Kirazet was able to defect. Maya added. Extended exposure to human emotions created new neural pathways that bypassed some of the original restrictions. The revelation hung in the air, a terrible truth and an unexpected advantage. The Vexari weren't inherently superior. They were prisoners of their own perfect design. Silex Prime glittered like a perfect diamond in the void, its crystalline cities arranged in mathematical patterns visible even from orbit. The Vexari throne world represented everything the silicon-based species valued: order, symmetry, and unchanging perfection. Now it was the site of the final confrontation. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Chen surveyed the assembled Alliance fleet, the largest gathering of disparate species in known galactic history. Ships of human, Luminar, Nif, and Cthulhu design moved in coordinated yet unpredictable patterns, protecting the weapon that represented their last, best hope. Stellar destabilizer activation detected. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her voice tense. Energy readings are off the charts. Chen nodded grimly. The Vexari Supreme Intelligence is willing to sacrifice billions of its own kind rather than accept defeat. A logical choice by their standards. Kirazet noted, no longer trying to hide the bitterness in their voice. The programming values continuation of the Conquest Directive above all else. Dr. Patil approached, carrying a small device that pulsed with an inner light, the countermeasure she and Kirazet had developed based on their understanding of Vexari technology. It's ready, she said, but someone will need to place it directly within the destabilizer's core as it activates. The interference patterns have to match precisely. A suicide mission, Chen stated flatly. Lieutenant Harrison stepped forward. I'll do it. The silence that followed was broken by Xarvek of the Kerith. We have developed a biological shielding based on our genetic memory technology. It might, with a probability of 17%, allow survival. Those aren't good odds, Harrison said with a small smile. Better than zero, Chen replied, which is what we all face if the destabilizer succeeds. As preparations for the final mission accelerated, Chen took a moment alone with Harrison. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Harrison's eyes reflected the stars visible through the viewport. You know, before the invasion, I was just a submarine pilot wondering if my life would ever really matter. He checked the specialized suit that Xereth had provided. Now I'm about to fly into an alien doomsday weapon with technology from 4 different species to save the galaxy. His smile was surprisingly peaceful. Seems like a worthy end to the story. Make it just another chapter, Chen said, gripping his shoulder. That's an order. As Harrison's modified craft launched toward the destabilizer, a massive construct hovering at Silex Prime's Lagrange point, the Alliance fleet executed its most complex maneuver yet: human tactical unpredictability, Luminar light distortion, Nif atmospheric manipulation, and Xereth adaptive responses, all combined to create a diversion that momentarily overwhelmed even the Vexari Supreme Intelligence's processing capacity. In that brief window of confusion, Harrison's craft slipped through, accelerating toward the destabilizer's core. Luminar light bending concealed his approach. Nif atmospheric controllers created a protective bubble around his vessel. The Dareth biological shielding enveloped him in a cocoon of rapidly regenerating tissue. I'm at the insertion point, Harrison's voice came through comms, distorted but understandable. Countermeasure ready. On view screens throughout the Alliance fleet, the destabilizer began to activate, its crystalline structure pulsing with energy that could collapse multiple star systems. Now, Lieutenant, Chen ordered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cascade of energy erupted from within the destabilizer. Instead of expanding outward to begin the stellar collapse, the energy imploded, creating a blinding flash that temporarily disrupted all sensors. When systems recovered, the destabilizer was gone, collapsed into itself, and with it, the Vexeri's final hope of victory. Harrison. Chen called into the silence. Lieutenant, report. For long seconds, nothing. Then, breaking through the static, a weak but unmistakable voice. Still here, Commander. Though I think I might be different now. The Exarith shielding, it's become part of me somehow. Across the Alliance fleet, celebrations erupted in 100 different forms. Luminar light displays, NIF atmospheric harmonics, Hexarith synchronized movements, and human cheers, tears, and laughter. On Silex Prime, the Vexeri Supreme Intelligence, faced with an outcome its programming had calculated as impossible, did something unprecedented in 60,000 years of existence. It asked, simply, how?